Tom and Jack from Cultaholic. Jack joined us yesterday on the Cultaholic Classic SmackDown review on the podcast feed. Did you have a lovely time talking about SmackDown from the year 2000, Jack?
Oh, I certainly did, Tom. Thanks very much for having me on, you and Matthew. I didn't realise that the shows were quite so... What's the word I'm looking for?
Good? Bad?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, good. But I didn't realise you and Matthew packed so many in-jokes in. And since being on the show, a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, test playing the Nintendo 65." I don't know what you mean.
It's its own little universe, that show is. But if you listen this week, there is a revelation about a wrestler from that era that we found out as we were recording. It blew our minds, didn't it, Jack?
I couldn't believe it. It's answered a long-lost mystery from my childhood. That's all I'll say.
Listen to it to find out. Oh, it's a hook and a tease. Anyway, here's the wrestling news. We have an update on multiple WWE stars currently off television. A top Raw star was injured on Monday night. We have the latest. And we also have the latest on plans for WWE Hall of Fame 2021. Quite a few people conspicuous by their absence from WWE TV, not through injury, but simply just not around at all. The three that spring to mind include Aleister Black, Andrade, and Bo Dallas. What's the latest on these three then, Jack?
In the delicate words of Dave Meltzer, they are effed, according to him. Which is sad if it's true. He was speaking on the latest Wrestling Observer Radio. And basically this all started because he was asked if there was a chance to revitalise Aleister Black, because Paul Heyman's a big fan of Aleister Black and he seems to have a bit of sway on SmackDown. And Meltzer said, well, he doesn't have that kind of power right now. If he had the power, then yes, I could see it, but he doesn't have that power and Vince does not see anything in Aleister Black or Andrade. Remember the guys when Heyman lost his position and said, I like these guys? They're effed, says Meltzer. The only one who ended up not being completely effed was Shayna, because I guess they liked the idea of Shayna and Nia, so she got brought back. But pretty much everybody else, they're with Bo Dallas in catering. And then he then talked about Bo Dallas and said, yes, he's still signed, he's there, and you know how they say creative has nothing for you? In his case, it's actually true, but usually when people say that, it's something else, because I don't know why he's never been cut. They just never use him, but they didn't cut him, and they cut all of those guys they cut in April. He's still there, he's still got a job, no idea what or why or anything. Big mystery. This sort of threw a lot of things into perspective for me, Tom, because obviously the roster is so packed at the minute that when I heard Meltzer say this, I was like, oh yeah, we haven't seen Aleister Black for a long time. We haven't seen Andrade. Well, I knew we hadn't seen Andrade because Charlotte mentions him on Twitter, but that's the only reason that he was like fresh in my mind. And it's quite a bad sort of state of affairs, really.
It's just there's so many wonderfully talented people on that roster who are doing either little or absolutely nothing. Bo Dallas, who I'm trying to think the last time we saw Bo Dallas on television off the top of my head. It has been years. It's been 84 years. It's been a long time since we have, and it's such a waste because he has these flashes of greatness, this Bo Dallas. When for the news podcast this morning, I was grabbing audio from the Bo Lee vignettes that he did in 2014. Like, they were great. Just really, really solid stuff. And to have somebody like that who's just knocking around. And I'm surprised they've not linked him yet with Bray Wyatt in any way, shape or form. That, to me, seems a relatively obvious win to do something with that. I know I'm talking about Bo Dallas a lot, but I think because with Andrade, I think he's certainly on the cusp of coming back in some form with Charlotte, all being well for him. With Aleister Black, that's a real anomaly. Whether or not the connection, like with his wife Thea Trinidad being let go, whether there's something there. The company has been that petty in the past, but Bo Dallas, God, give him something to do. Give our man Bo something to do, for goodness sake.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree. And yet, at the same time, we've now been hearing recent reports that WWE is signing... We're going on one of their signing sprees again, basically. So, presumably, in theory, there's even less room for people to try and make an impression now.
Yeah, you've got all these brilliant toys in your toy box. Yeah, you insist on going back to Toys R Us. Livid. MVP in the news today as well. One of those toys that was put back was pulled out of the toy box a year or so ago, or last year when he turned up at the Royal Rumble. He's had a heck of a time building the Hurt Business. In fact, the Hurt Business were a big part of Lockdown Raw during the Performance Center times, MVP and his guys seem to be all over the place. But there are some concerns for MVP in the near future now, aren't there, Jack?
There are, because unfortunately he sustained a leg injury on Monday Night's Raw. It happened during that six-man tag team match where he was teaming with Shelton and Cedric Alexander against the team of the Lucha House Party and Riddle. Meltzer then basically mentioned that it seemed like he'd hurt his leg at some point in some way and needed help getting to the back while the cameras were off. He appeared on Raw Talk later on that night, but was on crutches. So, yeah, it's kind of it's bad news for MVP, and hopefully he's all right. To add to the seriousness of the issue, or the potential seriousness, PW Insider reported that he then travelled to Birmingham, Alabama after sustaining the injury. Now, all I know about Birmingham, Alabama is that it's where people go for surgery in WWE. That's the only thing I know about it. But I don't know what that tells us about the degree of what he's done, or whether he indeed needs any surgery, or if he's just being looked at. I don't know.
Well, I think, obviously, if some people get in, like, a random stinger here and there, there's no need to desperately go to Birmingham, Alabama, but I think if he's going to their medical centre, suggests there might be a bigger problem afoot. As PW Insider has said, we don't know the nature of his industry, and I'm hoping it's nothing too serious. Injury. Yeah, I'm hoping that it's something means we don't lose MVP on TV, because he's been amazing. So we send our best wishes. Heading into WrestleMania coming up in April, there's a whole week of festivities coming up from Game Changer Wrestling. The Collective Remix is coming, and this is a series of independent wrestling events all under the umbrella of GCW. Bloodsport is having 2 nights, and we already know the lineup for one of those nights, don't we, Jack?
We do, and it features some big names, to be honest. The big match that everybody's already talking about is the main event: Jon Moxley versus Davey Boy Smith Jr. Not only, I suppose, in a way, is that, just a huge match, but it's also sort of an all Elite Wrestling New Japan clash. Davey Boy Smith Jr. really isn't that affiliated with New Japan anymore, but I still sometimes see him as a bit of a New Japan guy. Jeff Cobb versus Filthy Tom Lawler, JR Kratos versus Chris Dickinson, Rocky Romero versus Simon Grimm, formerly known as Simon Gotch, of course, in WWE. But I'm really intrigued to see how Rocky Romero does in a shoot-fighting kind of, atmosphere, because I always just see him as kind of a light-hearted, flippy man. Alex Colquhoun versus Royce Isaacs. Coughlin. I've just called him Colquhoun there. I've misspelled his name. Alex Coughlin versus Royce Isaacs. Carl Jack versus Super Beast, who I know nothing about, but my God, am I excited to see him.
He's a super beast, apparently.
Have you heard this?
I've heard that he is a beast of the super variety.
Is he well known?
He is well known in the Beast community.
Famous throughout the world. Calvin Tankman versus Nolan Edward, and Bad Dude Tito versus Calder McCall. So a lot of names there, some that I'm not too familiar with, some that I am very familiar with. So it should be a really interesting one.
But that big main event, Jon Moxley, Davey Boy Smith Jr. going down at Bloodsport. Staying with Davey Boy Smith Jr., he's going to be busy that week, because not only is he going to be fighting Mox, but he's going to be part of WWE's Hall of Fame on the WrestleMania weekend. And he was chatting to the Metro about this, wasn't he, here in the UK? So what's Davey Boy Smith got to say about the Hall of Fame?
Well, he's been talking about basically his role in his father's induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. And he said to Metro, I've been starting to pinpoint things. I'm going to have to base that on how much time they're going to allow me. My sister and my mother and me will be on the podium, and how much we're going to have to divide between the three of us, and who's going to do the induction for him. I'm not sure what or who that might be at this point because of the COVID restrictions. I think it will just be me inducting Davey as far as I know. I don't think that they're doing an audience just with the fans from the network on the screens. So that sheds a little bit of light maybe on how this will work. Also, I hope for all of us that the situation's improved a lot by the time we get to WrestleMania. But for Davey Boy Smith Jr. there as well, it would be nice for him to be able to have his family on the stage with him when he's inducting his dad.
Oh, without a doubt, to have them all there would be amazing. But and also, as you say, that it gives us a little insight into how the Hall of Fame be put together. And by the sounds of it, fans from the network on the screens, this sounds like it's going to be a Thunderdome job It's going to be in the Thunderdome for this one, because they did that with the Hall of Fame in 2019, where they had it at the same venue that Monday Night Raw and SmackDown were emanating from. So Hall of Fame had a very different feel that year, you know. So chances are they're going to stick to that. I didn't mind it, with the exception of the fan that tried to take down Bret Hart and got battered in the process. At least that won't be happening this year. I'll be surprised if it does. Burst out the monitors like the Ring, but that would be so. That's coming out of the Thunderdome. I reckon I'm going to put my money on that being Thunderdome heavy.
I would suspect so as well. It does sound like it, but we'll have to wait and see.
We will see indeed. We'll have more news for you later on. Also on Twitch today, Jack, you're on. How's Cultaholic FC doing? Give us an update.
Well, last week on the last game of the season, we reached the playoffs. We had to win, and we did. The Burnley Bullet pulled out of the bag. Glenny Omega pulled out of the bag. And Pofu at left back, who doesn't normally turn up, decided to have the game of his life in that game as well. So it was really good. Now we've got the playoffs coming up. We don't know how many games are going to last in the playoffs, so we're just going to have a go and see. And that's at 6 p.m. on Twitch today. We also, because we don't know how many games we're going to be able to play, we've also planned a few end-of-season awards that we're going to let the chat vote on. So that's going to be nice. Yes.
Twitch.tv/Cultaholic. You've got Jack and Owen guiding the careers of Cultaholic FC. I'll be on at 2 as well this afternoon, playing a bit of Legend of Zelda. Last time...
I'm enjoying your Zelda streams a lot. It's so nostalgic
mate.
For me, Tom. It's so nostalgic.
Well, enjoy it, because this is the last one for 2 weeks today.
Oh, I thought you meant the last one ever.
Last one ever.
Oh.
I'm off for 2 weeks after this week, so enjoy it. We're gonna try and get to the water temple so we can go out on a high. We'll see how we do. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.